And now, I would like to invite some very distinguished guests and speakers to join me on stage. Virgilio, João Pedro, and Ana. Hey. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much. This is a very humbling experience for me to be on stage with you three. I want to introduce you to them. Toni is Chief Executive Officer of COP30, former Vice Minister for Climate Change of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change of Brazil. She has a distinguished background in environmental and social justice initiatives, having previously held leadership roles at the Institute for Climate and Society, at Greenpeace International, and the Ford Foundation in Brazil. Under her leadership, COP30 will focus on some very simple accomplishments here: strengthening multilateralism, accelerating the implementation of the Paris Agreement and the outcomes of the global stocktake, and mainstreaming climate action across economic and financial systems. Welcome. Professor Virgilio Viana is one of Brazil's leading experts on forestry and sustainable development. He is one of Forbes magazine's 50 over 50. He is the former State Secretary of Environment and Sustainable Development for the state of Amazonas in Brazil. He coordinated the establishment of the Forest Stewardship Council, and today he is the CEO of the Foundation for Amazon Sustainability. Welcome. João Pedro Braga is a Brazilian economist and climate justice activist. João's work redirects finance towards a just transition in the Amazon. He is a member of the Youth Advisory Committee to the Science Panel for the Amazon, where he works to bridge indigenous and scientific knowledge about the Amazon to inform better policies for a living Amazon. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be up here with you. Ana, I would like to start with you. Your team is preparing COP30 in a very complex geopolitical environment. Several countries are spending more on defense. We're seeing a rise in populism, increasingly normalized. You recently said, quote, "Climate is a bigger battle, not of one country, but humanity." How will you and your team rescue multilateralism later this year?
So, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and good morning for everyone. I don't think it's not our team that will do that, it's everybody. It's every one of us. That's why we are calling everybody for this global multirão for climate change. Multirão is an indigenous word from Brazil that means a collective action for a shared goal. And I think, obviously one country left the Paris Agreement, but we have 197 countries that are staying in the Paris Agreement. We have several business companies here and that are really keen to continue and understand the need for us to accelerate action. We have citizens, we have subnational government, so we're going to do it together. And I think at COP30, we feel can be, after 10 years of the Paris Agreement, of 10 years that has so much happened as well, we have to come to Belém, and everybody is very welcome to come to Belém, to renew our energies and accelerate action. And I think nowadays, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I believe each one of us can be part of the solution, and that's the spirit of multirão that we are calling for people to come. And we know that we can only do that together. That's why it's so important for us to reinforce the strength of multilateralism in Belém.
Great. Thank you. Virgilio, your life's work has inspired a generation of conservationists to see the interconnection between the people of the forest and the forest. And I just want to tell the audience, if you haven't seen Virgilio's TED Talk, it's a must-see. Please do that. Virgilio, can you put your deep ecological and spiritual understanding of rainforests and rainforest guardians into perspective for the audience.
Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, joining Ana and João in this panel. I am the co-founder and CEO of FAS, Foundation for Amazon Sustainability. And when you ask me about the spiritual connection, my connection with the Amazon started when I was 16 years old, and I backpacked for 40 days overland crossing the Amazon. And after a long story, we decided to create FAS. FAS is the largest civil society organization in the Amazon. We are 17 years old. We work to fulfill the dreams that Elena shared with you here. We work to deliver concrete action for 800 communities in the Amazon, in a huge area, larger than Portugal, just for you to give to have a comparison, 14 million hectares. Our strategy is to focus on people. Oftentimes people think of the Amazon as a place with lots of plants and animals, carbon, water, and so on, but forget that it's a place where we have 28 million in Brazil, 38 million in total of the Amazon. So we have to have a human focus. So our purpose is to take care of people that take care of the rainforest. It's to achieve conservation through a people-centered approach and connect that to the spirituality, to the values of those that Elena so well represents here. The connection between this and the climate agenda is because of climate injustice. I think it's probably one of the most clear case of climate injustice. Those that have done the least to create the problem are suffering the most. So our role is to build resilience. And how do we do that? We do that through participatory approach, what you call radical listening. We listen to the priorities of communities, each of them, and then we try to come up with the funds, the resources to deliver those priorities together with them. And we do that using a systemic approach. We have learned that it's not enough to work with education only, health only, bioeconomy. It has to be all together on the basis of the priority that are set at the village level. That's the lesson learned. And in order to do this, we have to build alliances. So as Toni very well put it, and the call for COP30 is mutirão, which means collective action, we would like to invite all of you to become partners in any way or form that you can do. Maybe is to buy acai from a sustainable source here in Paris. Maybe is to go there and become a volunteer. Whatever way. Maybe become a philanthropist. Whatever. I think we're in a moment where we need collective action. And my final message is, come and join us. The Amazon is too important, and we have to do our best to save it and protect indigenous people. Thank you.
Thank you. João Pedro, I want you to talk to us about your journey to this point, how you came to focus on climate justice in the Amazon, and how that led you to rethink the economics of deforestation. Then I want you to take us forward on your journey. What does a just future for the Amazon and its guardians look like to you?
Big questions. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, easy ones.
It's a really great pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to speak alongside so many distinguished speakers, but also to enjoy the conference and also to speak with people who are willing to be part of the solution. And I really would like to make a reference here to the idea of the mutirão. my role in the Mutirão is by connecting research and finance. I'm here as a student, I have my notebook, I'm learning a lot from all of the guests who are speaking, but really, I am not someone from the Amazon, and this impacts a lot on my standpoint. I was born in Rio de Janeiro, which is a city in the Atlantic coast of Brazil, and the Atlantic forest has been destroyed by coffee plantations. It's a biome which has already seen the tipping point passing. It is also a biome who has been able to regenerate. So I have a lot of similarities, and I see a lot of similarities that I am able to explore in my PhD research on the financial drivers of deforestation. And just to explain what exactly that is the idea that when you think of Brazil, you probably think of football fields. But in the Amazon, every second that we are talking about here, half a football field is lost. And that amount can go up to 5 football fields. And that really depends on what is driving deforestation. Is that agriculture? Is that mining? Is that finance? What kind of activities are financing that? My role in understanding that research really is understanding the role of development banks on it. I am very privileged to sit, as Jonathan has mentioned, on the Youth Advisory Committee for the Science Panel for the Amazon. And in this committee, we are 14 young activists, 7 from indigenous families and indigenous territories, and 7 who have been able to explore what is it like to build bridges between the foreign environments, foreign universities, Brazilian universities, and the Amazon. So really, to try and understand how to rethink the economics of deforestation really is to addressing the causes of forest loss and try to understand how the financial sector, for instance, such as development banks, Brazilian development banks play a huge role in financing agriculture. How can these actors be part of the solution? Because as Anna said, if you are not part of the solution at this point, you are part of the problem. And really at this point, what I think is the key message that we are really dialoguing here is that everyone needs to play a part. Even if you're not from the Amazon, even if you're not from Brazil, being here, being conscious about what the causes of deforestation are, understanding that COP is only one of the points at the future for the Amazon, because it doesn't stop at COP. The Amazon is, as Eliane Brum has mentioned, the center of the world for many people. And it plays a really key role in regulating the water cycles in the world. And therefore, we need to think from their perspective as well. So I feel that there is a really good opportunity in starting this conversation.
Excellent. Anna, I would like to come back to you and talk about the COP30 leadership circles that were recently announced. Sonia Guajajara, Minister of Indigenous Affairs in Brazil, she will lead the People's Circle, which is aiming to ensure that the traditional indigenous knowledge, indigenous ways of knowing are integrated into climate action. Leading up to Berlin, we know that there is strong pushback from agribusiness and from mining and gas interests globally. What announcements and initiatives favoring the authority of indigenous peoples and Afro-descendant peoples and local rainforest guardians might the COP30 presidency and the People's Circle make ahead of Berlin?
Now that's really important for us, the People's Circles. And what a privilege to have Minister Sonia Guajajara. I don't know how many countries in the world has an indigenous person as a minister. And we're learning so much from her. And obviously we are having a COP in the Amazon, and we should be thankful every day for our indigenous communities, our traditional people, our quilombolas, for preserving the forests that we have. And we feel that in order for us to coordinate and help on hosting the COP30, we could only do that by learning from them, by listening their demands directly with the presidency. So by creating the circles of people led by Minister Sonia Guajajara is a way for the COP presidency to have aware throughout this process on the negotiations, on the heads of states meeting, on the action agenda, on the mobilization. What are the demands that indigenous people bring to us? They being, as they are, very straight. They know exactly what they want. And one of the biggest demands that indigenous people, and we just heard from an indigenous person just now, wonderful, I can't see her here, But what they are asking for is that the demarcation of land for indigenous people, traditional people, or quilombolas, be accepted as a climate action.
Right.
We all know that is a climate action, but that has not been officialized, and that's their demand, that this is officialized. For a country like ours that have the constituency, that already have in our climate plans the indigenous people's lands demarcation as a climate plan, is quite easy. But for many countries that yet not have that, that's, I think, what the COP can do, is bring this debate to other constituencies. For some countries it's hard because they don't have that in their constituency, but what can they do to accept that this is such an important issue? Indigenous people's demarcation of land is a climate action, probably one of the best climate actions to preserve forests, to preserve the climate, and that's the message that they're bringing to us, and obviously we're looking forward working with them on this demand and any other demands that they bring to us.
Hear, hear. Thank you very much to you and the presidency for setting up this leadership circle. João Pedro, explain to us what you mean by just transition. It's a super, super critical and important issue, and I just want us to break it down a little bit for the people here. What do you mean by just transition in the Amazon, and why is redirecting finance so essential for protecting rainforest, peoples, and the rainforest? Who pays, who benefits?
Yeah. This is the key question that I have to face in my research, and I'll try and simplify in a way that it's understandable. But basically, we understand that economics has a really deep problem in trying to understand what justice is. There are many definitions, but all of them are not necessarily tackling interdisciplinary perspectives. And what I have managed to use in my research is the definition of the Science Panel for the Amazon. It is a panel which was convened by the United Nations to represent a scientific authority on the specific biome of the Amazon basin. So the 9 different countries that compose the Amazon, they have nominated their scientists, and this has then allowed them to develop a Amazon assessment report, which is kind of an encyclopedia of the biome. You can check it online. And their definition of a living Amazon is a forest who has standing trees, flowing rivers, and social justice for the guardians. This idea of a standing forest, living Amazon, really needs a shift from the economies in the Amazon today, because as Elena has mentioned today, and also as Virgilio has mentioned, the Amazon economies, they are not focusing on value creation, they are focusing on value extraction. And really, the individuals and the finances, financial institutions that fund this, they are part of a system. It's not that they have a specific meaningful or a specific impactful goal to underdevelop the Amazon, but this has been the way in which the economic history of the Amazon has developed. So really, the just transition of the Amazon, according to the Science Panel of the Amazon, and what I've been developing in my research, is using the concessional funds of development banks, of international funds, of also pension funds, to be able to redirect the finance, which is currently funding exploitation, to fund regeneration. And really that is payment for ecosystem services in a lot of projects which are already coming out. For instance, at COP, the payment for ecosystem services in the process of the Tropical Forest Forever facility. This is a key mechanism. And these mechanisms really need to take the money back into the communities. No intermediaries, but really to have a direct connection between investing in the economies, investing in the peoples, because these cannot exist separately. They are part of the solution for a living Amazon.
Yes. Demarcation of lands and value creation, essential components of outmaneuvering the climate crisis. Virgilio, you believe in the urgency to act. When we had our first call to prepare for this event, the very first words Virgilio said to me was, Jonathan, we have crossed the 1.5 degree threshold. We are in a state of emergency. We urgently need to create new strategies to take real action. What new strategies are you and your team at the Foundation for Amazon Sustainability taking today?
Yes, we have crossed, as Anna pointed out, the 1.5 degree limit. I live in the Amazon. I live in Manaus, in the very center of the Amazon. where the Negro River meets the Solimões and begins the Amazon River for us Brazilians. I was shocked last year when we had this drought, which was the record drought since 1903. And before that, in 2023, we had the previous record. And in 2022, we had the record flood. 2021, we had the other record flood. So we went from 2 record floods to 2 record droughts. That means that the system is already out of balance. The tipping point in several dimensions has already come. So now, I think more than ever, we have an urgency to act. And this means that it's not to place the emphasis on negotiations for COP30. It's to place an emphasis on how we can deliver concrete action. And I mentioned before climate injustice. And those of us who live in cities, we get a free ride from the services that indigenous peoples and local populations, traditional populations provide to us. The rainforest is a cooling, sort of an air conditioning for the planet. It's a source of water for the planet. So that has a value, and it's an economic failure. It's a market failure because that doesn't have a market price. So we have an urgency to act. This urgency means that, as the Secretary General of the UN says, we need everything all at once. And it's a time where we have to stress the importance of multilateral organizations, multilateral action, not the opposite. Oftentimes people criticize COPs and say that they don't move enough. But I think we have to recognize that if it was not for the UN processes, we would be heading to 5 degrees. Now we're heading to 2.5, which is still not the desirable. But we have accomplished a lot. But we have to do more. And this is particularly the case for the Amazon, because as I like to coin, and I did coin this phrase many years ago, that the Amazon is too big to fail. Imagine the small banks of Wall Street that required a couple of $1 trillion. It started with 800 billion, ended up with $3 trillion to save the banks. How much is worth the Amazon? I bet it's worth much more than the Wall Street banks that were doomed to fail. So we have to mobilize finance. We have to mobilize concrete action. And that's why we always go back to the word mutirão. Mutirão calls for everybody, urgently. So it's not only a slow mutirão, a turtle mutirão. It has to be a sort of a race, a Ferrari mutirão, very fast. Do the best that we can everywhere, all over the place, in Paris and in Manaus, in Belém, in Rio, all over the place. Let's act now.
Yes. Absolutely. So Anna, let's stay with the theme of action, implementation. The calls for COP reform have been louder and louder since Baku. Specifically, calls for COP to prioritize people over polluters and to be less dominated by fossil fuel interests. Also for wealthier nations to get serious about financing poor nations. One of your priorities is to accelerate implementation of the Paris Agreement and the outcomes of the global stocktake. So I'd like to ask you, how will you shift emphasis onto implementation, and what role will the new global ethical stocktake play in implementation and reform?
That's a great question. I mean, first, we needed to create a sense of co-responsibility. we can see what's happening at the moment. It's true that all of us, every country, is really geared on creating renewable energy. Now we have electric cars everywhere, solar panels, wind energy. In many countries, in China, in Brazil, in the US, here, everywhere. But at the same time, demand for energy is also growing. So what's happening is that we are accelerating, with one foot accelerating renewable, but the other foot is still accelerating fossil fuel. We are not substituting our demands from one to another because the demand is growing. So one thing that we needed to understand is also the role of consumers that could be choosing, for example, on buildings or on mobility, to opt for substitution. So it's no longer to just have renewables, we need to ask for the substitution from some sectors that are now, we have the technology to go from one that's more polluting to another that's cleaner. So that substitution requires a joint responsibilities of producers and consumers. And I feel we have been talking very little about the role of consumers. It's very hard to change habits. All of us know that how difficult it is to change the habits. But if we don't change our own habits, the way we behave, we are not going to change the big economic forces that are there. So the global ethical stocktake, that's a proposal from the Secretary General Guterres, President Lula, and will be led by Ministra Marina Silva, is exactly that, is to talk about the behavior, how we change the behavior of people, how we change the behavior of consumers by everybody understanding they are ethical and moral, that when we talk about climate, it's just not only an economic issue, it's not only an environmental issue. At the end of the day, it's an ethical issue about humanity.
Right.
And if we cannot talk about those things, is obviously unfortunately, we just had this moment that the Pope has just passed away, and I think him more than anybody has told us that we have to act for nature, because by acting to protect nature, to act on fighting against climate change, we're acting for humanity. And I think it's bringing that to a different sense, not just talking to our minds, but talking to our hearts, using different expressions, arts, music, poems, so that people can also join the multidão by reflect. What can we do every day for climate change or against climate change? Yeah. What is the action that each of us, little, big ones, whatever, we can do as consumers, we can do if you're a CEO, you can do when you elect people, you can do as a mother. Every day we can do a small and a big action. And I think that big call is the purpose of the global ethical stocktake that Ministra Marina Silva will be leading.
Yeah, thank you. So we have about a minute left. I would like to give everyone 15 or 20 seconds to wrap up, but specifically, what is the legacy that you want to see from COP30 for the Amazon? 20 seconds for each one of you, starting with João Pedro.
Lovely. I would like to build on both points because I feel that there is a really good opportunity here. And this is something that just reminded me, the word for Pope, one of his titles is pontifices, in French pontifice. And that means bridge. We are building bridges. The multidão, you have to be connected to people. You have to feel like you're part of something. And we are part of planet Earth, but planet Earth is a really big community. We have to get closer. This event is a very important one. I was recently dialoguing with some groups of climate leaders in Brazil. We are still waiting for the Brazilian COP presidency to choose who will be the youth leader. It's a group of 24 people. We were discussing, whoever gets elected, what do we want from this COP? We want finance to be institutionalized in the Tropical Forest Finance Facility, in the Tropical Forest Mechanism too. we want the youth to be present, not in a tokenistic way. And we really would like to have a concrete declaration echoing what Elena has mentioned here. No more fossil fuels, no more oil, recognizing indigenous people. These are some of the main demands of the global youth of climate, and also the Brazilian side of it, because we really see that we can be leaders for inspiration, but we first need to start at home, individually, but systemically. The national component is important so that we can change the world and then change planet Earth. Thanks.
Thank you. I invite you both to have the last word, but please, 15 seconds each, 20 seconds each.
COP30 is going to be the COP for action. So I'd like to invite all of you to ask 3 questions to yourself. What have I done? What do I plan to do? And how the upcoming COP can be a source of inspiration for you to do more. Thank you.
Thank you.
And very quickly, I want to finish as I started. Just remember that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. If you remember that every day and remind everybody about that, perhaps we can together change the world. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you so much. What a pleasure and an honor to have been with you. Great job. Thank you.
Valeu,
Beleza. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Fantastic.